Hi, everyone. Just wait for some numbers to keep on coming through. Cool, we've got a bit of a slow climb today, but we will wait for another couple of minutes and then we'll kickstart today's webinar. Alrighty, let's go. Okay, welcome everyone. This is day 3 of Recycling Week. If you don't already know me, I am Natalia, the Sustainability Manager at Reclaim. And together with some amazing speakers today and obviously thinkstep, we are bringing you Recycling Week webinar series day 3, which is all about reusable Wednesday or the reusable economy. Now, today's focus focuses very much on avoiding single-use waste by opting for reusable alternatives. Hopefully what you've been seeing through our webinar series and actually through the the Recycling Week waste minimization hierarchy, which I've got here, is that each day's focus is cumulative to the previous days, or actually different ways that you can actually bring all of the previous days together. So say Procurement Monday, where you're looking at avoiding, and Reusable Wednesday is a way that you can avoid waste, and same with Waste Free Tuesday. By bringing in your reusables, you can actually avoid or actually achieve previous days. And today I am joined by 2 amazing businesses that actually live this ethos and actually help you bring Reusable Wednesday to life in different ways, but I will introduce them a little bit later. What we'll go through right now is just a little bit of housekeeping. I would like to say thank you once again to thinkstep for helping bring this webinar series to life. We could not be doing it without you guys. Over to you, David.
All right, thanks very much, Nat. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm David Klein from thinkstep-anz. I'm a senior sustainability communicator. We're very pleased to be partnering with Reclaim and New Zealand Recycling Week to support the really great work they're doing. If you don't know us, thinkstep-anz is an independent sustainability firm. We've got offices in New Zealand and Australia, been helping businesses in their sustainability journey for the past 15 years. We do a lot of work with the sustainability strategy and have technical solutions to make products, businesses, and the built environment more sustainable. We also love to focus on packaging and the circular economy, which you'll be hearing a bit more about today and for the rest of the week. A little bit of webinar housekeeping. Thank you so much for joining us. But as an attendee, you're in listen-only mode. That'll make sure that the recording audio is top quality. We would, though, like this to be an interactive webinar, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll see those questions and be able to answer them during the webinar. Please don't use the chat function. That doesn't save the questions, so we'll miss out on them if we don't get a chance to answer them live. Finally, this webinar is being recorded. It should be on the Reclaim YouTube channel later today or tomorrow. So if you need to pop out or you'd like to share this recording with a colleague later, no problem. Back to you, Nat.
Thank you. Alrighty, so without further ado, I am introducing you to both Greg and Craig. So first of all, Greg is the co-founder and COO of Reusabowl. For you guys that don't know what Reusabowl is about, they're essentially looking at tackling takeaway food packaging waste, which we're all guilty of. I'm sure when we don't feel like cooking, we just want a quick and easy solution, which means a lot of waste associated with it. Now, Reusabowl provides you a simple and efficient solution to actually phase out some of these materials that we come in contact with through a reusable bowl that you can take to outlets and collect your food in without any waste associated with it. Now, I won't tell you any more. I'm sure Greg is going to cover all of it. And Greg will be followed by Craig, the GM at Will&Able. Now, Will&Able is an awesome organization in New Zealand, actually the first social enterprise in New Zealand that actually has both a social and environmental purpose. Now, they help create jobs for Kiwis with disabilities, and through their operations, they also follow a very eco-centric approach. So they have chemical-free products, and they feed into a circular model by actually recycling a lot of milk bottles and turning it into their products, but also taking back and having a refillery system. Now, please ask as many questions from these guys. Please keep the questions coming through. We will get to questions at the end, but now I'll pass it over to you, Greg.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Natalia. And thank you to Reclaim and to ThinkStep for organising Recycling Week and these webinars. Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for coming. Yeah, so as Natalia said, my name is Greg. I'm just getting my slideshow up now. Let me know, Natalia, if there's any issues with seeing this. But yes, happy Recycling Week, everybody, and thanks for showing up to Reusable Wednesday. As I said, my name is Greg. I am the COO and a co-founder of Reusabowl, which is a Wellington-based startup that aims to tackle the problem of single-use takeaway packaging waste. A little bit about my background. Before joining Reusabowl, I was actually a lawyer, so I don't have a huge kind of sustainability background in my career. I used to work in private practice as a banking lawyer, and then after that, I worked in government at the Treasury as an in-house lawyer. But I think, like a lot of people during the pandemic, I had an opportunity to think about what contribution I wanted to make and what I wanted to do with my life. And an opportunity came up to join a great little company called Reusabowl, finding something that I really care a lot about, waste. And yeah, and I've sort of been part of the team for about 18 months now and really love it. One fun fact about me is that I am ambidextrous. So that means I can write, play sports, etc. with my left and right hand equally well. Now, if you only remember 3 words from this presentation, I'd like you to remember these 3: melon-headed whale. So I don't know if you guys know what a melon-headed whale is. It's sort of like a big dolphin, right? These guys live around the waters of the Philippines and some other places as well. They mainly eat squid, and they weigh about 200 kilograms, which will become immediately relevant as we look at the next slide. So if you're an average office worker in New Zealand, chances are you get takeaways for lunch up to 3 days a week. So that means that if you're like most people, you're producing 3 items of single-use packaging waste for your week, for those meals. So at a kind of workplace level, if you're kind of a medium-sized business, about 50 people, that really adds up. So those 50 staff, if you're an urban workplace and everybody's a typical urban worker, that means you could be throwing away up to 7,000 containers every year as a workplace. So if you added the weight of all those up together, that would be 200 kilos, which is 1 melon-headed whale's worth of weight. And if you stack them on top of each other, that would be half the height of the Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building in the world. So it's an interesting insight that even for a relatively small workplace, just one small behavior, takeaway food and the packaging associated with it, actually adds up to a really big waste problem or a really big waste impact. Unfortunately, it gets worse. A lot of that packaging is not properly recycled or composted. So for example, a lot of commercial composters, including councils, often don't accept compostable takeaway containers because of the quality of the material doesn't produce great compost. As for recycling, a lot of people don't properly wash out food containers before putting it in the recycling, which means that the whole bag of recycling gets contaminated and actually just goes straight into landfill. And also the rules are just a bit confusing sometimes, where it's inconsistent whether and when you can compost or recycle things. Also, even if kind of everything was perfect and everybody disposed of these things correctly, unfortunately, most single-use packaging, it just reflects a linear economy, which is a big sustainability issue. The linear economy is taking resources from the earth, making something out of it, and then throwing it away once you're done. And with single-use items like takeaway packaging, that's a really big resource drain, because every single item that's thrown away repeats that process. More needs to be extracted from the earth to create another container to replace the one that's been tossed. So over time, the emissions and resource use associated with the linear economy are really significant. So a bit of doom and gloom, but hopefully it's kind of relatively clear what the solution to kind of single-use packaging waste is, and that's reusable packaging. I'm not going to sit here and say don't get takeaway food anymore. That would be crazy. We're all busy. We need some time back in our day. Speaking for myself, I hate cooking, so I always get takeaway food for lunch when I can. So it's just really about changing a bit of behavior, really, around, instead of people getting their food from in a single-use packet, getting it in a reusable container instead. But as many of us will know, there's often some tricks to kind of achieving behavior change. Some key principles to keep in mind are that if you want to change someone's behavior, if you want to introduce a new thing like reusable packaging instead of single use, you need to make that new behavior obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. So Reusable is, as I said, a Wellington-based startup that basically set out asking the question, how can we make reusable packaging obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying? We started originally working out of Wellington through like an eatery-based borrowing model, but we've since pivoted to work almost exclusively with workplaces, because we've seen how big that collective impact is when a workplace chooses to use reusable packaging instead of single use. A little bit more about our product. So this is a Reusabowl. There's a photo there, but also I've got one in my hands here. So we've got a circular economy product. So that means that we, as much as possible, have designed the product to be in line with circular economy principles. It's made out of rice husk, which is, it's a waste product. It's like the inedible shell of the rice seed that is normally burnt as part of the, once it's separated from the rice during the manufacturing process. Instead, we combine it with some other bio-based ingredients. It turns into this kind of very durable, almost plastic-like material that can be microwaved, put in the dishwasher, put in the freezer, etc. But at the end of its life, we collect those containers and ensure through our partners that they are properly composted. So kind of no greenwashing here. We ensure through our relationships that the containers are actually properly composted to return to the earth. And we've also got a system around our product for workplaces that mirrors the circular economy and sharing economy as well, which I'll talk about a bit here. So effectively, really, really simple solution. We have designed these containers to look really nice and to stack really nicely together, to be one size fits all, etc., so that workplaces can buy a whole bunch of the containers to share amongst their staff. So maybe one for every 2 people kind of thing. The workplace sets them up, ideally somewhere visible, so that you're prompting people to pick up the bowl. And then for individuals, you're just grabbing a bowl from the shared stock. We have a QR code on a poster nearby that you can scan and find a list of eateries near you, a map full of eateries near you that we have personally checked, and they've confirmed that they will serve anybody who comes in with a reusable. So you can be guaranteed, there's no awkwardness around knowing whether or not you're going to be accepted with your reusable at these eateries. So you can just head to one of those or anywhere else you like. You can then enjoy your waste-free lunch, and then instead of coming back and putting your single-use container in the bin, you're putting your reusable into the dishwasher so that it can be washed and ready to use for the next person. So again, embodying that circular economy principle of keeping things in use as much as possible, but also the sharing economy of not producing or or kind of selling more stuff than we need to make the impact that we're really after. If you are interested in getting some reusables, shameless plug here, you're very welcome to head to our website. As I said, we sell them in bulk for workplaces, but we also sell them in smaller amounts for individuals. So I've got a couple of URLs up there which I can share as part of the slides for anyone who's interested. But yeah, so if you are keen on getting some reuse bowls for yourself, please do get in touch. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time. Thank you from me and the melon-headed whale. And thanks for your interest in kind of embodying some more of these sharing economy, circular economy solutions like reuse. All the best.
Thank you, Greg. Do you want to maybe pop those links into the chat so people can actually follow those links?
Absolutely.
Directly. Now I'm just going to get Craig's presentation up. So I'll just share the screen for a second. Oh. There you go. Over to you, Craig.
Thanks, Natalia. And again, thanks to Reclaim and ThinkStep for organising this event. And Greg, what a great idea, mate. That's awesome. You know, giving up a career in legal and doing something that's so simple and effective. And I think that's a really good theme here is, you know, recycling and trying to make a difference doesn't have to be that difficult. And that's probably a key message. So look, I think if you go to the next slide, Natalia, or to put your Nat, make it easier. If you could just go to the next slide. Look, you mentioned it, you know, who we are. For those that don't know about Will&Able, we basically a social purpose organisation that is all about offering an eco range of cleaning products in New Zealand. Think Eco Store. Our bottles are made from recycled New Zealand milk bottles. But the most important point is that filled and packed by people with intellectual disabilities. And that's the primary cause, which is creating work for people with intellectual disabilities that otherwise wouldn't be working. So what I wanted to share today is probably the link between how our journey between linking to our primary cause of creating work, being a social purpose, and how we brought eco credentials into it and how we made it work for ourselves. Because to be perfectly honest, when we started, it wasn't really, we weren't the people with the best eco credentials in the world. It wasn't our focus. But where we are now, about 3 years later, is actually incredibly important. So in the context of Reusable Wednesday, I want to just talk about how we're using a reusable model with our bottles, really to differentiate our product, but also to help create more work for our guys. So if you can just go to the next slide. So our goals are, first of all, we want to create 100+ jobs for people with disabilities. And that's significant in that is that we want to be scale. We want Will&Able to be a brand that people really recognise. Most of the issue with social purposes, people don't have a lot of money. So to get your brand well known out there, it's quite a challenge. So if we can achieve that, you know, eco cleaning products is probably just one thing that we'll do. We'd like to extend that to a range of other things. But what we've found is equally, it's to pioneer a new model of cleaning and the reuse of plastic packaging. And I think for us, it's really this concept of taking our plastic bottles and not throwing them away, not giving them and chipping them back up into other bottles, but to actually just clean and refill them. Very simple. So if you go on to the next one, which is our outcomes. So we've got 3 outcomes that we deliver, and I'm sort of repeating myself a bit, but it's important. First of all, jobs is the primary one. Then we had environmental products. So that's, you know, our products are plant-based, just like a lot of our other competitors, which means they're made from, you know, resources that are, you know, not, you know, like not petroleum-based. So they're reusable resources, better for rivers and waterways. But that's a little bit of table stakes right now. And really the area that I think is most important is the sustainability question. You know, what's happening to the packaging? I did a little session, a little recycling talk yesterday as part of the week around conscious consumer, which sort of links into this. And the 2 things we're really getting people to, as conscious consumers, to think about is, first of all, what happens to the product or the packaging after I've used it? And this is sort of like the IKEA moment, you know, people have it 2 years later, it's in the dump. So what's happening is really important to that product afterwards. Let's get thinking about that idea. And the second one as a conscious consumer is what happens to the proceeds that I've used in terms of my purchase of the product? What's happening to that? Is that doing something to better society? What is it being used for? So that's sort of what we talked about yesterday. And I think this whole concept of what's happening to the product is the focus of today. So I wanted to focus now on our journey in recycling, and that's the main part of the talk. So if you can just put that slide up. Why we linked our product initially with eco is eco and social go together. And I think that's probably one of my messages, is that we're really thinking that people that want to care about people, which is what you've got to do if you're, supporting a cause, tend to think about the environment in the same way. They seem to be the same sort of person. So we think there's a really strong link. And at any point, that cause can be interchangeable. People are probably going to buy our product more for the recycling side of it than the actual cause of creating jobs. But once they know about it, that's probably what's going to keep them doing it. That makes sense. So when we started in 2019, I've sort of declared my eco credentials. We came out and we had an online model. We said, well, look, we probably should have a way that people can send the bottles back. I'm not quite sure what we'll do with them. They're made from 100% recycled New Zealand milk bottles, but if we get them back, we'll probably be able to make them into plastic decking. We know people that can do that. So that's what we started off. We made an offer. People could spend some money, and we would, when we dropped off our new bottles, people could actually buy a ticket and the courier would actually pick up the empties and bring them back to us. We thought, I wonder how many people would do that. And look, surprisingly, 20% of our customers did it. We thought, oh, that's obviously there's a little nerve that's been hit here. People want to do something around sustainability. We then brought on board, I had a sponsor called Aon that came and gave us some money to get going on advertising. They also offered, they had a branch network of insurance and branches throughout New Zealand, 70 branches. And they said, well, look, why don't you let people come and drop them into our locations? That's a good start. And we were quite surprised. A lot of people actually did that. And that made us start thinking, well, this has actually got a bit of legs. We're starting to get a lot of bottles back. What are we going to do with the bottles? And that's when we sort of thought, well, jeepers, there's cleaning products in them. Why don't we just sort of clean them, rinse them, and put some product back in? And these products normally come up in quite good quality. We could use them 4 or 5 times. So that's sort of what we adopted. We went from the sort of recycle, repurpose to reuse, which is, I guess, the theme of today. And for those that can remember, glass milk bottles, when you used to buy it, you put out your empties, and in the morning, magically, the milkman would deliver your new bottles. That's sort of the principle we want to follow, and we think it's really important. So then when we thought, well, this is nationwide, how do you make this significant nationwide? And there's organisations like Will&Able throughout New Zealand that employ people with intellectual disabilities, the likes of Kilmarnock and Christchurch, Abilities on the North Shore, Cargill Enterprise in Dunedin, there's a whole lot of them. And a lot of them are actually quite involved in recycling, soft plastics recycling. So we've suddenly harnessed a group of people that are involved in recycling and creating work for people with disabilities. So that's how we're getting all our bottles going up and down the country. Kilmarnock, actually based in Christchurch, means any of our bottles going into the South Island never has to leave the South Island, and that they'll be cleaned and refilled. So then two things happened from then. We said, what about business? What do we do to get businesses involved in the circular economy process? What would get them engaged? Probably Will&Able. We don't sell enough and they don't use enough to make that significant. But hold on, they use a lot of milk. So if we could collect their milk bottles, particularly the clear ones, because the clear milk bottles are the source of what our bottle's made from, if we can collect those at the same time, that gives a bit of volume, and we'll collect the Will&Able. And the idea that we're doing is that we drive our van round and we pick up from the likes of PwC, Auckland Council, MBIE, a couple of people we're doing it for. We pick up their milk bottles, we pick up the Will&Able. Hey, look, guess what? The milk bottles go off empty and they come back as our virgin new bottles. And the ones that we've got, our ones, we just bring them back and we clean and refill them. So that's quite a simple but easy idea for businesses to get involved. And it's sort of this concept of ESG, environmental, social governance. It really gives them quite a good, easy way to get those programs going in the organisation, and their staff really get involved in it. Then we thought, look, business is great, but our real base is our consumers, our households. What are we going to do? And then we said, Aon's great, but how can we make it more convenient? And that's we thought, well, just imagine if we could get a service station forecourt. So people are doing something they're already doing. They've got a few of our empties in the boot, and while they're filling up, they go and put our bottles in the bin, and away we go. And it just so happened that we're talking to Fonterra, and they were working with Z Energy, and they said, look, we've just become the new supplier. We've got all these bottles need being picked up from the Z Energy cafes, and they just go through truckloads of bottles of milk. We need someone to pick those up. And we said, well, we can do that. We've got a nationwide network. We'll pick them up. So that's exactly what's happening. Is a pilot of 9 sites around New Zealand, and if that's successful, then we'll roll out to 200 sites, which means 90% of our customers will be within 5 minutes of dropping out our bottles that'll come back to us. And we then started thinking, well, you know, if you could get that going significantly back to us, suddenly we've got a bottle coming back free, which is going to reduce the cost of our product. Price is why probably we don't sell as much in the supermarket when competitors are on special. So suddenly you can use a sustainable model to not just be a nice thing you're doing, but to be a key strategic initiative that's about reducing your costs if you get it right. So that's where I'm thinking is, you know, let's go big on this. I drove around yesterday. I'm sort of hands-on because we're a small organisation. Drove around the Will&Able van. If you've ever seen us, I'm full of milk bottles and Will&Able, and it's fantastic because I drive up there. I pull out these big bags. They're anchor milk bottles, which means they're not as flexible in recycling, but we make sure that they'll be made into plastic plumbing pipes, plastic building sheets, and also plastic bags. So we can guarantee what's going to happen there in terms of product stewardship. And so I'm driving around there thinking, initially when I did, I thought, well, this is a silly thing, drive around with a van load of smelly milk bottles. But if you can just get your head beyond that and think, hey, I'm getting people to make my product cheaper so that I can have a cheaper price and people will buy more. And why do I want people to buy more? Because then I'm going to get more work. So that's sort of where we're at. If you can go to the last slide. You know, and ultimately where we want to be is, you know, we're in supermarkets, we're on online, but eventually we want to be an organisation that's involved in the community. As I said, we've got lots of organisations with disabilities spread throughout New Zealand. You know, if people are collecting our bottles, in theory, why don't they just fill them up where they are? You know, we've got a process where we can get people to fill up with 20 litre, our bulk products, and then just do that swap a bottle thing that you see that's done with LPG. So that's sort of ultimately we want to go to, and really get back to this idea that reusable, you know, Wednesday's all about, which is don't have single-use plastic. If I can have little stamps on my bottle showing this is through its 3rd cycle, wouldn't that be cool? Final point, I've probably got a couple of minutes, I think. Final point would be, recycling is great, but I'm here all about creating jobs. And just so you understand the importance of what we're doing, people that we employ wouldn't be working if we didn't give them a job. And I know from my son who works here, you know, his journey is difficult. These guys have a difficult time, very isolated, going through school, and then they get their first job, and they're just unrealistic expectations about what they can and cannot do. They come to a place like Will&Able, they relax, they become part of a team, they get a purpose, and they see a real future for where they can go. And that's the real message of Will&Able. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Craig. Very inspiring. I can definitely see that. I've seen lots of Will&Able around, and similar to you, Greg, I have my own reusable and I look cool while using it. So honestly, everyone needs to get one. Now we'll just head on over to some questions. We've had a couple come up on the chat, but actually what I would like, what is the main takeaway that you guys suggest as an individual that people can take towards contributing more to a sharing economy?
I can go first. I guess one main takeaway I'd probably have is that there are, you know, like Will&Able, like Reusabowl, there's heaps of lots of businesses now that are actually putting in the effort to make these things easy for you, for others. So it's hopefully not as intimidating as it has been in, you know, the last decade or so. So yeah, do go out there and experiment with other ways you can participate in the sharing economy. You know, get a Mevo next time you're going to the supermarket, you know, which is a sharing economy car system that's all done with electric vehicles. You know, try and take your own Tupperware. You don't have to buy reusable. Try and take your Tupperware to an eatery, you know, etc. You buy a Will&Able product. Because by doing that, you're both making an impact, but you're also supporting the businesses that are ambitious in this space. Yeah, and obviously Will&Able, great example of an organisation with great plans, big plans to make an impact. And every time you support them, you're getting not just yourself but the country closer to that goal of the circular sharing economy.
Amazing. Do you want to add anything else, Craig?
Yeah, look, I just think, and Greg did a great job of summarising. Not much to add to what he said, but really that conscious consumer, which is really what we're all trying to convert to, is those two questions you just got to have in your mind when you're buying something. What's going to happen to the product once I've used it, and where's the money go when I've made the purchase? What's it going to do for the society and the economy? If you can do that, it's great. And just start small and change your behaviour is the best way to do it. And I think reusable, I reckon it's such a cool idea. It'd be a great way to start.
Awesome. Okay, we're just about running out of time, but I just wanted to say one last question, and all the questions that have come through, we'll answer them separately. But the question that has come through is, there's a lot of companies or a lot of beverages that actually use refillable as part of their marketing. What is the definition that you use for reusable, and do you think that there should be some sort of label system to actually capture it? Because a lot of these materials that are perhaps single use have the potential of being reusable, they're just not marketed as such. So how do you guys see reusable, and what do you actually understand by that? Tough question.
Good question. I mean, reusable I define as anything that can safely be used more than once. So I think keep it a broad definition, but I would absolutely agree that you're, again, like on those principles of it needs to be obvious, easy, satisfying, etc. The infrastructure is a really key part of that. Any barrier you place between a consumer and a new behavior is going to stop them adopting that new behavior. Any infrastructure you can put in place to support them, doing that, is often great. So, Reusable doesn't have fancy infrastructure. We operate in closed loops through workplaces, but there's lots of businesses that commit to building that infrastructure to make all of that a reality. And I'm very supportive of that, of celebrating and kind of promoting that as a kind of priority.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think a definition of reusable would be, an analogy would be the glass milk bottle test, which is, does it meet that sort of that system approach, which is, you can't have a model which is you use it once and that's it, and I'm done, I'm ticked, and I'm fantastic. It's got to be used, 3 or 4 times, or in the case of ongoing, which is sort of like what Greg's at. You could use that forever. Those are the models that you want to look for, not that I've filled it up once and that's it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. All the other questions will be answered, but once again, thank you so much to ThinkStep for hosting us, Reusable and Will&Able for joining us. Please tune in to tomorrow's Rinse and Clean focus. But until then, keep using your reusables today and forever. Alrighty, see you tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.